What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp here for the Fightful.com Shane Helms podcast. I'm joined by this dude. Might know him as Shane, might know him as Gregory, might know him as Hurricane, might know him as Kid Vicious. I hope you don't know him as Kid Vicious and not the other things. That would be kind of weird. You ever had anybody come up to you on the street and go, "Hey, I remember you. You're Kid Vicious"?
No, just people in the biz. I don't. It takes a real diehard fan to pull that one out. There's another Kid Vicious though that was on the indie scene. I think from California, and he claims that he didn't get it from me, which is entirely possible. But yeah, there's another one out there. First and foremost, though, just as I've done the last couple of weeks, we got to acknowledge the shirt this week.
Oh, wow.
Bob Ross. And if you're wearing Bob Ross shirt, happy little clouds. That's how it's going to be today. Happy little clouds all day.
Another great Ross in the world's history. Now, before we get into our topic, which is the original brand extension, you had a busy weekend, didn't you?
I don't know what I do. I know I watched a lot of MMA, and not all of it was good. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that. I know we dabble in MMA with our conversations. That main event of Bellator was lackluster, which might be an assault to the word lackluster.
Yes.
I picked Juliana Pena to actually.
Ooh, you bad?
Yeah, you bad. Yeah, she's always been really good. She's been out I tweeted about it a little bit how Valentino was more skilled and all that, but Pena has in the past always just found a way. One of those people, and when you got heart and you're scrappy like that, wasn't nothing I put money on now. I didn't put money on it, but I picked it for fun. I won 5 out of the 7 that I picked. But one of them, gotta just be honest, I picked because it was the wrong guy.
Who was it?
It was Lima. It was the guy last name was Lima, but I thought he was another Lima. And so I picked him just for that reason.
I wonder if that's the guy that there's a couple of sets of guys in the UFC where there are 2 people with the same name. I know Dong Hyun Kim is one of them. And I think there's a heavyweight that has the same name as like a welterweight. Donald Cerrone also lost. I don't know what's been up with him. He's been fighting off of his back foot lately, which is weird.
He's one of those guys, too. It's hard to – he fights so much. He's going to have a bad game every now and then.
Sure.
And that one's really bad. He's a notoriously slow starter, and Jorge didn't give him any chance to really get into the fight. He started whipping out the jab pretty quick. I know I was texting with my buddies, Conan and Disco and stuff, and I'm like, look, his nose is already red like a minute into the fight because Jorge done popped him in the face a couple of times. I still thought Cerrone could have won that fight. That wasn't a bad fight, but that just wasn't his night.
Yeah, getting dropped is not any sort of indication that he's going to lose a fight because he gets dropped in the first round of like every fight that he has, it seems. Also, I mean, you crowned Omega Tag Champions, correct? My friend Christy Party told me that you all did a little bit of a callback to the TNA final deletion, the total nonstop deletion, as she was, what the hell was her name in that segment? She was the reporter.
Yeah, she was the reporter in that segment,
yeah.
And she was a ring announcer on that show. So, it's something that you'll be seeing on TNA television going forward. And you get to see the very beautiful Omega Tag Team titles.
Nice.
I got a weird mindset when it comes to titles. I think they should look awesome. I don't want just the company logo on the title, and that's all you see. And you know exactly which titles I'm referring to.
Mm-hmm.
I harken back to the days when I used to see Ric Flair's big gold belt, and even before that, Nick Bockwinkel's AWA belt. Because we got these guys out here fighting for these championships. So if you see the championship and it looks like shit, to me it's like, why are they fighting for that?
I remember that old NWA US title, man. That's one that
love that one. Love that one.
Favorites.
So I want the Omega belts to be like, extraordinary, and they were. They are. The heavyweight titles are awesome. The tag titles are very cool. They're paying homage to the ones we had back in the day, which were like a big yin and yang sign.
Oh, nice.
Back when indie company, you couldn't afford no good belts back in those days, but they did what we could, and they look pretty cool. So this is kind of an homage to them, but they look pretty impressive. I'll make sure I put up some images pretty soon so everybody gets to see them.
So today we're talking about the original WWF, WWE brand split. WWE did a new one last year. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. You are one of a plethora of WCW talents that came in. This has to be an answer to them ending the WCW project, right? They've got this roster, all these people on it. You can't just have one show, I guess. They thought maybe they could make more stars. That's the line we were given, at least as fans. What did you think when you heard brand split? Was it like, well, it's because of all these WCW and ECW talents?
Oh, without a doubt. I don't really think that's that big of a mystery in this day and time. It was the WCW experiment didn't go quite as it was planned or as it was hoped to, at least. And so now you got just like a ton of guys on the show and a ton of like really talented guys too. So you don't want to let them go. And the idea, behind the whole WCW thing was to create your own competition, was for Vince to have his own competition. So this was just an extension of that exact same mindset. So instead of WCW and WWF, now we're going to have Raw and SmackDown. And a lot of us looked at it as a golden opportunity, because more television time for guys to get a chance and opportunity. So we all, pretty much everybody was pretty happy about it.
And you look what it did for several guys. It's hard to believe that people like even JBL would be a world champion and have the legacy that he does if it were just one brand. Jack Swagger, hard to believe he would be a world champion had he not had that opportunity. Rey Mysterio even, I'm sure he could have accomplished that, but having two brands really gave them the opportunity to do it. Worth noting, in addition to having the WCW and the WWE talents, they had a crop of OVW talents they were really high on. Brock Lesnar, Batista, Randy Orton, Charlie Haas, Shelton Benjamin, Rico Constantino. They thought was going to be something. So this is a truly maybe one of the biggest influx, probably the biggest influx of a roster ever to hit the WWE. How far ahead did you find out about the brand split personally?
I think whenever the offer started talking about it to different people, when it was just, I don't remember a specific moment, but none of us knew where we were going. If that's where this question is probably leading, none of us knew where we were going. That draft was especially that first one was a total shoot for us. So we were just kind of chilling, hoping for the best. And like I say, it is a very optimistic time. A lot of people were excited about it.
You say optimistic. Now, obviously there are dozens of personalities in that locker room. Was there a sense of, you guys need to tell us where the fuck we're going before, or was it, let's just wait and see?
There probably was somebody like that, some people like that want to know everything, but I don't remember myself ever being concerned about it. It was a television show, and I wanted to be on one. We got one or two options, so I really didn't care which one I was on, as long as I was on one of them. If you want to grill me about it, SmackDown probably later.
That's what we're doing here. So
since we're grilling, yeah, let's grill this. In later years, SmackDown became the place of bigger opportunities. Raw was very political. Certain people that were there in positions were just very political to deal with. So SmackDown became the wrestling show too, where you would see. It just became the better show in the majority of the time of the brand split. So SmackDown was where a lot of guys wanted to go, but at the same time, a lot of guys liked Raw because that was Vince's baby, and it was still the flagship show, and it always got a little bit more attention when it came to promotion and stuff like that. So there were different reasons to be on the show.
Now, what were you told about the brand split? Was it framed in the same way that it was framed to the fans? Like, we have all this talent, we want to create competition, we want to do this. Was it framed the same way to you guys? You're muted.
How about now?
No,
yeah, it was framed to us the exact same way. That it was an opportunity for a lot of different talents to get exposure. That it's going to be 100% completely separate shows. We're not going to be jumping back and forth. If you own one show, you're not going to be on the other one. And so, that's exactly how it was presented to us.
Now, you said you didn't care which brand you were on. Was there one that you looked at and were like, well, that would be more convenient for me, whether it be because of travel, because of relationships, because of family, anything of that sort?
No, the travel schedules were the same. I think so. Monday Night Raw, you would do a house show on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then you would do Raw. On for the SmackDown brand, you would do a house show on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then do SmackDown. So it was just a one-day shift in travel, but you're still working 4 nights a week, assuming you own everything. So the amount of time on the road at home was basically the same.
I'll jump ahead a little bit. You talk about SmackDown doing house shows Monday. They do that now. What were the houses like on Mondays when a lot of those fans consider Monday Night Raw?
I think Monday was generally the lighter ones of the show. And I don't know if you can see this, but your video is going crazy.
Yeah, I can see that now. Yeah, don't worry, I'll fix it.
I'm about to have a damn epileptic seizure. I think I had a seizure pronouncing that word.
It glitched out a little bit.
But I think Monday was generally the lighter of the show, attendance-wise. Probably Monday Night Raw being on has something to do with that, but also just because it's Monday night. Kids got school, that sort of thing. So Monday was a little bit of the lighter one.
So this draft happens. You don't know what's going to happen. You weren't selected on TV, but there were a lot of big names that also weren't. There's DDP, Raven, Chris Jericho, Matt Hardy, Jeff Hardy, Taz, Christian, not selected on TV. Did that affect you at all mentally?
Not mentally. I didn't expect it. So it was one of those deals where they're going to highlight the guys that are already the top guys. So when I write and when I try to write segments and stuff like that, I try to make sure nobody is that you don't highlight that you don't like somebody. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's what would happen sometimes with those drafts. The guys that were getting drafted on TV, these are the guys we care about. Everybody else can go fuck themselves.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it would come off. And it would come off like that to fans. So it would have been better if they would have found a more creative way to do that. But at the same time, I really didn't expect to be one of the guys on TV. To do the, whatever the main draft, but it wasn't like nothing that hurt my feelings or anything. I was fine with my positioning on the card. Not that I ever settled for anything, but just at that particular time, it was what it was. So, I think we actually found out online because we still didn't know even when we left the building. It was done.
That was my next question. That was my next question. It was after 20 picks. It was done via a lottery draft on WWE.com. So are you all or you or anybody crammed around the computer? What's going on here?
I think we were driving to the next town. And is when I found out I was in a car.
So you hear about all these, and one of the picks that really interested me, Tajiri, the Cruiserweight champion, also wasn't selected on TV, but was on the lottery portion. Mm-hmm. He was sent to SmackDown. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts going through your mind when that Cruiserweight title goes to SmackDown because you haven't gotten the news that you're going to Raw yet?
I think initially I thought that I might go to SmackDown because of that, but I still wasn't certain. A lot of my because I was, the biggest cruiserweight there, I would still work with a lot of the heavyweights anyway. And I was right on that line, of being a heavyweight myself. Damn sure heavyweight right now. So, but I think it did lead me to think at that particular point in time that I might be going to SmackDown, but. Like I said, fast forward an hour later, whatever, I'm on Raw, and I wasn't surprised by that either. Brian Garutz was the head writer of Raw, and he's the guy that helped me a lot with the Hurricane stuff. So I wasn't surprised that that's where I stayed.
So almost immediately after, you're on Raw. Mm-hmm. How did this affect you mentally? Like I said, this has got to be a roller coaster of emotions anyway. You've got the future of your career in the hands of an online draft lottery, which obviously was predetermined, but you are a cruiserweight. You're one of the bigger cruiserweights, but you're on Raw, and you're on Raw with some big names. How did you feel about this? Your character's pretty over at this point already. Not nearly to the level it's about to be, but did this make you optimistic, worried, neither? How did this, what was your mental state like?
It was opportunity. I was pretty jacked about it. We just cut down the amount of people I had to compete with by half, on the show. And that's what you're competing with. You're competing for TV time, and half of them assholes are gone. So I ain't got to worry about them no more. And because a lot of the cruiser weights went to SmackDown, you know, I kind of can play the David and Goliath role almost, you know, exclusively myself. So it was, you know, opportunities galore for me.
Did you know of anybody that was just absolutely livid at where they went?
Nothing comes to mind. I was trying to think about that. Like we did so many of those drafts, and I remember hearing different things throughout the years when people would get upset. But that first one, I don't recall anybody being super upset. It just seemed like it was the first one more so than the ones that came after. It was a lot of optimism in that first one.
Yeah, I remember Jim Ross wasn't too pleased when he found out on the air that he'd be going to SmackDown, and understandably so. A guy who's been in the business that long. And
did that happen in the first one?
No, it didn't. It happened in a later one, like towards 2008-ish, I think. But I remember he was visibly like, "What the fuck's going on, guys?" And he's a dry dude anyway. If any of our viewers have ever watched him, like an interview with him, you can never tell if he's making a joke or like pissy or sarcastic sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh man. There's no draft in 2003. They brought it back in 2004. Are you guys told at any point, like, hey, this is going to be a possibility, we're going to freshen things up?
Well, definitely the freshen things up was a part of the reason they did it. That's 100% a part of the reason they did it. You know, I mean, keep in mind that pro wrestling is, you know, the longest episodic television show in damn history, especially as far as, you know, being a serialized thing. So you got to constantly do things to keep people interested and buzzing. And that was just something to freshen it up. So 100%, that was what it was all about.
So let's talk about this 2004 draft, because it was an interesting one. I remember it like it was yesterday. Rene Dupree, Mark Jindrak, Rob Van Dam, Teddy Long, Spike Dudley, and Triple H are drafted to SmackDown. Now, Teddy Long would obviously go on to have a major impact on SmackDown. He was the general manager for years. Mark Jindrak, they gave him a shot on SmackDown. It didn't work out as much as they thought. He was originally pegged for Batista's spot in Evolution, which some vignettes emerged of that. Nothing really happened for Rene Dupree besides getting the shit kicked out of him by Hardcore Holly. On the Raw side, they got Nydia, Shelton Benjamin, who made an immediate impact, Rhino, Tajiri, Edge, who obviously had a major impact, Paul Heyman, who immediately quit. Now, here was the interesting thing at the end of the night, and I thought this was a great way to set the tone of the unpredictability. Eric Bischoff on screen and Triple H were upset about Triple H being sent to SmackDown. So what Eric Bischoff did was traded Booker T, Bubba Ray, Devon, Rico, Jackie Gata for A-Train, Chuck Palumbo, Triple H. I will say today, Jackie Gata is in better shape than any of these people. And that is in no way a slight to any of the people that I mentioned.
True.
Freak of nature. Now, when you see this, you got Booker T, a former WCW champion. You got Bubba Ray and Devon, former ECW champions. Rico and Jackie, whatever, for A-Train, Chuck Palumbo, Triple H. Now, I remember the consensus on among the marquee marks was, oh man, they just buried a lot of the WCW, ECW talent. They loaded them all up and traded them for Triple H. Like he was worth all those. What did you think of that trade?
I think that's exactly what they were telling people.
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't an accident. That was done with intent. That was just to let me explain to the world that Triple H is worth all these other people. And we'll throw in the A-Train and Palumbo so that it don't seem quite that one-sided.
Yeah,
but
we ain't talking Tensai here. We're not talking great NXT trainer, head coach A-Train here. We're talking like about to be out of the company A-Train.
Yeah, that's exactly what they were going for. They did that with the intent. I didn't mind the trade thing, but yeah, that was pretty one-sided the way that came off.
Yeah, that one was.
It was one of those weird jabs at talent and stuff like that you don't need to do, which I'm not a fan of, But I see the thinking behind it too. You want to create an aura around this guy that he's that much better than everybody else. And that was, part of the Triple H character was that he was, one of the best. So
keep in mind, this was one of those guys was Triple H's WrestleMania opponent like the year before.
Right.
So the next year, another big draft, and this one's got some big names in it. Going to Raw were John Cena, Kurt Angle, Carlito, Big Show, Rob Van Dam. And that's just one side of things. To SmackDown, Benoit, Orton, Muhammad Hassan, who was over big time at that point, and Kazuro Davari, Christian, and Batista. So obviously a lot more big names are switching brands here. How did you feel as a talent who I think at the time you were teaming with Rosie? How did you feel about all these huge names just back and forth? And obviously some of these names are much bigger now than they were then.
I mean, it just made sense. You want to kind of even the playing field a little bit. If one show has, just a unfair amount of the bigger top tier stars, it's not going to take fans too long to figure out what's going on there. Our fans aren't quite as dumb as our, writers sometimes wish they were. So, we're just trying to even the playing field a little bit and keep things fresh.
Now, they had to one-up the trade from the year before. So this year, it was William Regal, Candice Michelle, Sivan Grenier, Simon Dean, and Stevie Richards to SmackDown for Chavo Guerrero, Hiroko and Kenzo Suzuki, Danny Basham, Rene Dupree, and Mark Jindrak.
Okay. That's pretty interchangeable. That's a lot more fair than the one from the year before.
The best thing to come out of all that is that, I don't know, we probably didn't have to see Kenzo Suzuki wrestle anymore after that.
There you have it.
Because he was the shits. Hiroko was a nice-looking lady, though. Now, 2006, there wasn't a traditional draft. They had ECW, so obviously that was taking precedence, and they allowed a little bit of an ECW draft. Thoughts on the ECW brand being added to this brand extension?
There was still some value to the ECW name, so I see what they were going for, trying to draw some of those fans in. Being there with the company, though, at that time, there was a lot of the WWE fans. They knew some of the ECW guys by name, but they really weren't familiar with their work or anything. So, the ECW, the show itself has, been kind of mythologized. Is that right?
Yeah,
I think I'm butchering
something
that
like
word.
that.
It
could be a new word.
It's kind of like really put over. When we think about it, it's a lot better than it might have actually been. And that you can say that about a million other things. But when some of the guys came in, people just didn't really know who they were. Some of them they did, but they knew them more by name than about their actual work. So they weren't familiar with some of the stuff that they would do in the ring and stuff that would normally get us a pop in ECW. Didn't quite get the pops that it got here in the WWE version of ECW. But I was very interested in them. Of course, I was one of the ones that watched it. So I personally liked it and thought it was pretty cool.
So we saw the ECW one night stand thing where they had the big interaction with WWF stars or WWE stars and ECW stars. How much of that cynicism and sarcasm and that attitude towards ECW was real, or was it all put on? Of course, you can't speak in generalizations. That's stupid. But how much of that did you experience backstage or hear or see?
There was a lot of it. It was real. A lot of that, how they viewed that product was, and the things that they would say on TV. And I can't pull out an example, but I remember a lot of jabs going toward them, and that came from a place where somebody believed that at some point, So yeah, there was a little bit of it, but
I remember
the backstage locker room was always pretty cool. There wasn't I don't think any really heated animosity as far as people wanting to fist fight or anything like that.
I remember there was a copy of ECW One Night Stand that I was able to find where you could hear everything like JBL was saying during the matches. And I loved Mike Awesome Masato Tanaka because it was just fun, crazy mayhem. But JBL was like, how many finishers does this guy have? And I was like, Jesus.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got a third brand now. In addition to Raw and SmackDown, you got this third one. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, I was saying JBL was really proud of WWE, and so anything that wasn't WWE in his eyes was a lesser version of what WWE's.
Well,
So,
and at that point, he probably should have been.
That comes from a place of he really felt that way. So it wasn't really that hard for him to play that as a character because he really believed that.
At that point, he had been with the company for a solid decade, and they stuck with him through Justin Hawk Bradshaw and that terrible Blackjack Bradshaw shit. And he emerged and was in a successful tag team. And by that point, he had a main event run. So he probably should have been proud of WWE.
Oh, no doubt.
So you got this third brand. Do you see this as an opportunity, even for you in the future?
I don't think I ever thought about that. I don't think I was like an ECW guy. I mean,
you would be eventually.
Strangely enough, since I was hardcore champion in WCW and WWF, 1 or 2, but hardcore wrestling wasn't my thing. It's not what I didn't really care for it too much. So I don't think I ever really even thought about it.
What was the feeling, or was there any talk, or your personal outlook when they started? They quickly started to change that ECW brand. It was obviously not the ECW of old, and the stuff we're always given is, well, it's on a global scale now. It's not on a national scale or a regional scale. What did you think?
Well, the thing too, a lot of those tricks have been done. A lot of the craziness stuff that you saw in ECW, once you see it a couple of times, it starts to get watered down. And now we actually got to perform in the ring. And that is and has always been a knock against some of the hardcore wrestlers, that when it comes to actually having matches, that's where they struggle. And that's why they depended on the hardcore stuff so much. Now, if you're going to do that with some of the guys in WWE land, not everybody's a big fan of getting bashed in the head with a chair every night. And they shouldn't be, as medical technology has shown us that's not the healthiest decision that make in your life, to get bashed in the head with a chair. So it was more of trying to slow that down a little bit so that you have something to build to. If you're dropping nuclear bombs every single week, then there's no global war to build to. So it was a little bit of that, and trying to just make ECW a little bit more into the WWE universe, because the WWE universe is successful. The ECW universe was not.
Was there any sense of real competition backstage with the other brands? You'd see it here and there, like in interviews.
Yes, 100%. 100%, yes. And there was a time too, like is when I was Gregory Helms and I was on the SmackDown brand, and we had Undertaker, Booker T, Mr. Kennedy, MVP, myself, Matt Hardy, Chavo, Bray. We had the roster, and we were the wrestling show. You might see some of the a little bit more of the glitz and glamour on the other one, but if you wanted the good wrestling, it was SmackDown, and it was by far the better wrestling show. And when we went overseas, there was this competition on who would outdraw. And so when we outdrew them overseas, we would make sure that they knew, they would send little messages and shit like that. So there was definitely a competition, nothing heated or hated, but there was definitely competition. Which pushed people, which was good.
How often would you see people from other brands? I mean, obviously co-branded shows, some signings, but
only on co-branded pay-per-views. That's the only time we would see them, when they were being real strict about enforcing the separation. The only time we would see them would be on those joint pay-per-views. So, and that's when it worked the best to me. It was when they kept the separation legit. It made those joint pay-per-views mean a little bit more.
Now they did that again with this draft, this recent draft, but they had a real affection for fucking with people, Shane. They would split up couples in these. Yeah. And I listened to a Bruce Pritchard podcast where I think Conrad asked him, why would they do this? And Pritchard said to have them maybe emerge from the, what's the word I'm looking for? The trials and tribulation to see if you can get anything out of them. But I mean, that's to fuck with the boys. That's a little weird, right?
Well, I think there was only a teeny tiny part of it was to fuck with the boys. If you're a business, the business comes first. And if I'm running this company, my need and use for the talent is going to super exceed whatever romantic relationship they're in. That's personal. What show you on, that's business. And so from that standpoint, I really don't give a shit who you dating. If I need you on SmackDown, that's where your ass is going to go. So I without a doubt understand that. But I was always also one of those people, I had my fun in that locker room, but that was still work, and I always kept it like that, and I think historically that's been pretty much the way to go. I think the stats kind of lean toward my point of view as far as that being a smart move. I don't think they went out there to go, hey, let's fuck with so-and-so. But if it happened to fuck with so-and-so, I don't think they were too worried about it. And they might enjoy. I mean, it's not like this big Bilderberg cult group that gets together and goes, let's fuck with the boys.
Well, hey, speaking of Pritchard's podcast, if you ever heard the Vader show where he talks about how they had the drink spilled all over Vader, let's make him sit in that shit all night.
Yeah.
You never know.
I mean, that's kind of a rib, though. That's not fucking with your life.
Sure. Well, Vader might take it that way. This year they did
actually win any fights.
What is that?
But does he actually ever win any fights? So
that's true. It's a good point.
I don't think they were too afraid of it.
On last year's WWE draft, they split up Emma and Zack Ryder, Paige and Alberto Del Rio. They didn't take that well. Alexa Bliss got called up while her boyfriend stayed in NXT. Not much you can do about that. If you're not ready, you're not ready. Carmella and Big Cass got split up. And I feel like one other. John Cena and Nikki Bella didn't. If you're surprised by that, I'm not. And a couple other ones like Miz and Maurice stayed together. Naomi, the Usos. Well, you think that mentality is still around? Like, let's see if they can emerge without their significant other, maybe overcome.
I mean, well, honestly, hearing you say they did it to so many people, it does make one wonder. I mean, let's just split them up for the hell of it. But I would hope that it wasn't about that. I mean. And nobody in that office should be playing Dr. Phil, trying to, whatever, mess with anybody's relationship. So my hope would be that that's just how it happened. Some of the couple stayed together. Some of them got split. And, I mean, deal with it. Personal is personal, but business is business.
Imagine being Zack Ryder. You get over big time.
How would I do that?
Exactly. So he gets himself over.
I love Zack Ryder.
He gets himself over to an extreme degree. And I mean, he gets himself over to an extreme degree. And then they cancel his internet show. They're like, you can't do it anymore. But they put the U.S. title on him. And then they're like, well, we'll put the U.S. title on you. We'll give you a girlfriend on TV, but we'll have Cena make out with her. And by the way, you don't know how to change a car tire. So that's the deal too. Hey, we're going to just have you do nothing for a few years. We're going to team with Mojo Rawley. That's a fun thing to do. Hey, you're going to win at WrestleMania, which nobody can take that away from him. You're going to lose it the next night. Hey, you got this smoking hot girlfriend, one of the hottest women in the WWE. Yeah, she's on a different brand. That poor guy.
Has she came back yet?
No. Hell no. They didn't even do the vignette on Raw. This would have been the 18th week.
Oh, damn.
That's not hyperbole. That's a real number. 18 weeks. I think at this point, the only two that it went on longer, Glacier and Berlin. Alex Ryder.
I didn't even know they were a couple.
Who? Zack Ryder and Emma?
Glacier and Berlin, you dumb motherfucker.
They might be.
You got to stick with my jokes, man.
I got it. I just wasn't sure. It's a bad joke. Bad joke.
None of my jokes are bad. They're all good.
2007 draft. Definitely not as star-studded as that 05 one. And I'm not even going to run through the list of people that switched. But there was a supplemental draft. All in all.
I was out. Was I out for this one with my neck surgery?
I believe so. Either that or 08.
Remember texting Undertaker during this one because SmackDown was getting fucked in the draft. And I remember, and he and this is how, if this is the one I'm talking about, I'm thinking of, he was in Vince McMahon's office showing him my text. And that's how the Hurrah pop-up character ever came to be, just by how, because I was just popping them with my text. popping them with my tags. That Hurricane's a funny bastard. That sort of shit. And that's how that whole Hurricane pop-up thing came to be.
So do you happen to remember anybody that switched in that so I can verify that this was the year?
It was like, I think like SmackDown lost Ric Flair and we got Great Khali or some shit like that. Or like we got Toy Wilson for Ric Flair. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? You know? I can't remember, but it was something along those lines, you know.
Yeah, Ric Flair got drafted to SmackDown, and SmackDown.
Okay, we got Flair.
Yeah, and
okay, that must have been at the end. How did it go begin?
You lost King Booker, who was getting over big time.
Mm-hmm.
You lost Bobby Lashley, who had been with ECW, and they had kind of been doing the interpromotional stuff there. You lost Mr. Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
You lost London and Kendrick.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, who else? Davari.
Who were our top tag team at the time?
Yes, that's true. They had almost a record-setting run. You lost a lot of people. There weren't any major names on here. Lashley, Flair, Booker, Benoit. Benoit went from SmackDown to ECW, but there was a loose affiliation there.
Yeah, I remember Flair was one that. There was something with him, and I thought we lost him too, but I guess we got him. There was some, because I knew there were a couple of names toward the end where I go, okay, at least they're throwing us a bone. But I remember SmackDown getting really screwed over in that particular draft.
So not a lot happening there. Now, the year before, I kind of skipped over this. We talked about this before, but you went to SmackDown. You told me before, you found out the day that you won the title, the day of the Royal Rumble. You show up. You're told you're winning the title in a suit, because wrestlers get suits when they win titles. It comes with the title. Your feelings on being sent to SmackDown?
It didn't bother me. I never really had a problem.
I'd say not. You're about to win the damn cruiserweight title.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being on SmackDown, and when I got brought to Raw to be Kane's tag team partner. Like I had already, I had been through that once before, and it's just a matter of finding a new writing partner. To me, it still work. I mean, there's going to be a couple of my buddies I can't hang around, but I mean, the whole locker room likes me, man. Shit. I just strangely enough, I was one of those people that never had problems with too much of anything. So I was fine with it. Especially the talk that we're going to give this division one more run, and we want you to be the guy to carry it. And I mean, it wasn't going to be no long-term thing. It was never set out for me to break the record or anything like that. It just happened because I was fucking amazing. That's pretty much how that happened.
Pretty sure they didn't tell you that was the reason. At any point,
they had no choice, kid. They had no choice.
But you look at that roster, and you'll see why. We'll talk about like these drafts. They made some changes. They started to do matches to determine picks. At any point, were the boys like smartened up to brand switches? Because it didn't seem like it, but I mean, maybe some were in some circumstances. I'm like, they're not going to switch Triple H, a guy like Triple H, and not tell him beforehand, right?
Yeah, that 1%, that top tier 1% probably was clued in and probably had a voice. Undertaker was a SmackDown guy pretty much the entire time. So I think that was his decision, his choice to want to stay there. So that 1% was probably in on it.
When
the rest of the 99% can do what the fuck they're told.
So they didn't do an Occupy WWE draft movement?
No, we didn't get none of that.
What changed for you when you went to SmackDown? Like, do you have to did travel change, anything of that nature?
Just as I said earlier, I mean, with SmackDown, you would leave a day later, but you would come home a day later. So, that was it, and just finding somebody new to ride with, which wasn't hard for me.
Did you prefer a brand once you were on SmackDown? Were you like, damn, this is a lot better than Raw? You spoke about the politics on Raw.
Yeah, I prefer SmackDown. The strength of Raw for me was with a writer who really understood my character, as far as the Hurricane and Brian Gerwitz, really understanding what that character was.
I thought it was
SmackDown, I was Gregory. Whatever. What did I say? It's grits or words. These things. But a SmackDown with the Gregory Helms thing, it's not as much character. It's just, kick-ass wrestler type thing. So, and Michael Hayes, really understood that part. So, I didn't have no problems. But SmackDown, my overall enjoyment was always more on the SmackDown side.
In 2008, we returned to some more big names being switched. Rey Mysterio to Raw, Jeff Hardy to SmackDown, CM Punk to Raw, Matt Hardy to ECW. Jim Ross, as we mentioned, that infamous spot where he and Michael Cole switched brands. Batista to Raw, Triple H to SmackDown, Kane to Raw, Mr. Kennedy to SmackDown, Umaga to SmackDown. And then even in the supplemental draft, you get people who would go on to be interesting names like Mark Henry. Shelton Benjamin was always a good hand, of course. So they're starting to do this. A good hand. I love Shelton Benjamin.
Take care thing to say.
Hey, Shelton Benjamin is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time to watch.
Yeah. No, it ain't. It's just fucking sap. Because I looked up your family tree and you would have fucking sap.
What the fuck's that supposed to mean? I'm the glue of my family. I keep everybody together because they love me. Is that what that's supposed to mean? Good job. Thanks, Shane. Sure. I appreciate the compliment. You're a good friend.
I told you, buddy.
And you know what? I'll say this. You're a great hand for Fightful.com.
I imagine I am.
You are. It was not a backhanded thing to say. Shelton Benjamin, I thought he could have been more than.
But it's one of those know your role things to say.
I agree. I should have said that a little bit better. But I thought he could have always been more than what. Like every time he was in there with the top level talent, it was unbelievable. The matches were incredible. I like the Shawn Michaels stuff, Triple H. I remember on SmackDown, he had like a television run. Like, I don't know if his thing was just to have a television program with The Undertaker and not on the pay-per-views, but they tore the house down. They had some awesome matches. And
Shelton always delivered in the ring. That in-ring was never his problem. He's got a very weird delivery in his promo, but Shelton has a very unique way he talks in real life.
Yeah.
And so and it's more of that. He's got a very just unique cadence to the way he sounds, and and it just doing promos when it sounds weird. It isn't that it sounds weird. It sounds like Shelton. That's how he talks. But to some of the higher ups, they really didn't get that, and that's how they kind of looked at it. But in the ring, it was never a problem. That dude's good. He's one of the best.
Did some of the most amazing physical feats I've ever seen. Like if you can find dark matches that he and Brock Lesnar did where one will do a 450 and then the other one will do a shooting star press, and you look and you go, how in the fuck did they do that? It was just unbelievable.
Here's something that you'll hate about Shelton Benjamin. Hardly ever works out.
Yeah, I remember reading that in an interview. He said it was all genetic.
Looks like that. Oh, I hate him. That's one of the reasons. Like, I love him as a friend. But as far as being a gym person, hate him. Hate his guts. Just wakes up, great shape, don't do shit. Pisses me off.
One of my favorite all-time vignettes on Raw was the one with him, Vince McMahon, and Trish Stratus. You remember that, where she had the face mask, the "Are you ready for some wrestling?" It was a spoof of the Terrell Owens one with the I don't know if it was Desperate Housewives or whatever, but it was right after there was that NBA brawl in the stands where the basketball players went in the stands and started to beat the crap out of people.
Yeah.
And Vince McMahon was taking little shots at the NFL and the NBA. And Vince McMahon was like, Shelton, you may not realize this, but you're an African-American. And everybody knows that African-American men love Canadian white women with broken noses. And it was one of the best vignettes I ever saw. And Shelton really shined in that. And it was entertaining stuff. And I saw that and I was like, okay, maybe they will push Shelton Benjamin there. But
I don't remember that at all. If I saw it, I probably permanently deleted it from my mind.
Oh man, I'm going to send you that.
Just from how it sounds right now.
It's I'll send you the Terrell Owens one, then I'll send you the Shelton one. It was good because I remember in the media, a lot of people were taking shots at WWE, comparing the NBA brawl to WWE. And then I think this was Vince's way of being like, Yeah, we'll show you. And I thought he did great. But yeah, I hope Shelton still gets his WWE run because they were bringing him back last year. I really hope that he still gets that. Because he is more than just a good hand. I apologize. Yeah, that's about it for the 2008 draft. Now,
but that was another one that was kind of one-sided, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, there were some big names that switched too. But Raw gets Rey Mysterio, CM Punk, Batista. But SmackDown does get Triple H, Jeff Hardy, Jim Ross.
Triple H didn't stay there too long, did he?
I don't think so. I feel like he didn't. And Umaga wasn't around long after that either, but he would have been a good one to have. 2009, Shane. Let me see. What do we got here? What year was it you were drafted? 2009, I think, or 2010. Either way, it was 2009. So 119 draft picks over the years. I counted. And you went untouched. You didn't have to change a lot. You changed when you won the Intercontinental title. But with one selection left to go in the draft, you were sent to ECW. How'd you feel?
I understood the business decision behind it, but I didn't want to be on the ECW show. But I understand with the Sci-Fi Network, the Hurricane was the closest character they had to a sci-fi character, I guess. So that was the whole reason behind putting me on ECW. I wanted to. I've been talking to them about bringing back the Hurricane character, but more of an updated version of it, where it wasn't just all the hokiness as before.
Yeah,
and maybe even without the mask. Just let me bring back the costume, and let me bring back the logo, and let's see how we go from there. And I actually did that at WrestleMania Access without permission. It was me and Zach. No, it was me and Jimmy Yang against Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins on a WrestleMania Access match. And I put the costume on, and I had the trench coat that I was wearing. And when I came out and I bust open the trench coat, Clark Kent style, banana, as Pat Patterson would say. And I remember one of the production guys saying that was the biggest pop of the entire WrestleMania Access. And it was just more of, a nostalgia type thing, a character that the fans had really liked at one time coming back for the first time in a long time. So with that, and that's what I wanted to do. But then with the ECW on Sci-Fi, wanting that Sci-Fi type character, they wanted me to go back the full way with the mask and everything. And so I did that, and I understood the business behind it, but I was never too thrilled to be on that ECW show. The stuff with Paul Burchill I loved, and I can't say that.
It was a good angle.
It was a really good angle. Really, I had really good matches with Paul. And some of the promos they did with me, the video packages they did, they were probably the best of my run up there. The ones they did on the ECW show. But just the feel of that show, when I would watch it back, there was some talent on that show that, to me, just wasn't ready to be anywhere near a fucking television camera. And, we're a team out there. If you on that show, that's your team, and you got to be proud of your team. And it was frustrating, some of the stuff that I saw go out on the show.
Paul Burchill, I thought, was ahead of his time. Like
he was a good hand.
Just if he were here, if he were around like today, like the PWGs and the Evolves, they would love to get their hands on him. And then I think he would become a big commodity elsewhere. He had such a great agility for his size, like that a lot of people didn't even necessarily get to see in WWE. But
right,
I remember seeing
one of the worst card players of all time. Now.
Really,
Jen on a flight from to England one time, and he was absolutely abysmal. Like his cards, he would hold them up, and some of them would be facing me. And I was like, "This can't be real." He can't, and they would keep falling out of his hands. He didn't know how to fan cards and hold them. They would be falling out, and I'm like, "Are you serious?" I've never seen a human being have this problem with cards. And I half thought he was ribbing me, and so to this day, maybe he was. I was like, nobody could be that bad. But we're, why carry on a rib for 4 hours? I don't know why he would do that, but a great guy. I like Paul a lot. We almost actually missed that flight because we were eating and we didn't hear the announcement for the flight to take off, and we were over there just fucking off. And we were like the ECW addition to this Raw tour. So we were like the only guys from ECW going to be on there. And we fucking almost missed it.
So when you're drafted, do you have a talk with anybody?
No.
So nobody is like, this is why you're switched.
No. With the ECW one, that was the only one that I ever had to talk with. And that was to explain the sci-fi thing, because I had talks creatively with certain people about what I wanted to do with that character, all that stuff I just told you earlier. And they were seemingly on board with that. But then when the ECW thing came on and they decided to go in a different direction, and as a talent, sometimes you just got to go with what they want, and you present your case, you can plead your case, but at the end of the day, if the boss wants a certain thing, then that's what you're going to have to do. And, you hear some of the stories about some of the guys that they go and they stand their ground and it works out. And those stories, they gain a lot of steam over the years as being really bigger than they really were, because 99.9% out of the time, you're going to do what the hell Vince tells you to do.
So who's the person that you talk to about the sci-fi thing, or that gives you the reasoning about why you're drafted to ECW?
That was Johnny and Vince.
And did that ease your mind at all?
I mean, it made sense. If you come at me with something that makes sense, I'm fine with that. I'm not a person that if you tell me something that, if you prove me wrong, I'm not one of those people that gets upset when I'm wrong, because I can learn something from it. And so at first I felt it was the wrong move, but then when they explained it, I saw the business sense behind it. So I had to just accept that, because it made perfect sense and I understood the reasoning behind it. So I just went along with it.
Were there any immediate plans for you that you were notified of?
Yeah, right away. I mean, the whole thing went out the way we were going to do. I was going to do the backstage reporter thing, do it for a little while, but I ended up being better at it than they anticipated. And so they kind of drug it out. But that all went the way according to plan. I was going to be a backstage thing, slowly evolve into until it's time for the Green Man to come out.
You had to exceed that Mike Adamle benchmark.
That was tough. That bar was pretty high.
Yeah.
So I had to work diligently to overcome that one.
But I remember you did bring back the Hurricane character. As you said, looked different, looked a little darker. It wasn't, you didn't have to paint your hair green. I'm sure you were happy about that.
Yeah. I mean, that was all by intent. I wanted, as I've talked to you before on this podcast before, to make the Hurricane character work, I had to wrestle down. I couldn't be out there doing the vertebraker and doing all these really great matches, because for some reason that created a disconnect with the character and what people wanted from that character. If I'm the comic relief, or if I'm doing comedy spots, sometimes it was really difficult for fans to accept that I'm also this really good wrestler, because then they would go, well, if he's that good of a wrestler, why is he doing that weird shit? That would create that question there. So, I turned heel Gregory Helms, and now I'm reminding people, not just the fans, but it reminded the office, because I distinctly, and I don't know if I told you this, I remember Arn Anderson coming and going, "God damn, kid, I forgot how good you were." And I remember going, "Yeah, what? What? How the hell did you forget that? I mean, the Hurricane was a work. What do you mean you forgot how good I was? The Hurricane was actually harder to pull off than Gregory. Yeah. Even though I was wrestling down, it was harder to make successful than Gregory Helms." And so what I wanted to do was combine those, have the character and the marketability of the Hurricane, but wrestle like Gregory Helms. And the only way to do that was to kind of take away the superhero thing of it. Let me be a man in a mask. Let me be Rey Mysterio. Let me be Kane. Stop calling me a superhero. Call me the Hurricane, and let's go with that. That was what I wanted to do. But as I said, with the sci-fi thing, they wanted to do the superhero thing again. So that's what we did.
How was it on live events? Did you have to change it up for live events? Because I know sometimes that's a different crowd. You got a lot more kids in the crowd than maybe a television show. There are some people that wrestle a different style on the house shows. Did you keep it pretty much how it was on TV? How did that work out?
I mean, I worked just as hard. The dives to the outside would have been a little bit more safer on house shows and stuff like that. And you don't go out there and try to knock each other's teeth out on the house show too much. So other than that, my style was, I was pretty much the same. I wrestled hard no matter what.
We hear about ring rust. Did you have any like character rust getting back into that? Now, this was a little, as you just said, a little bit different than the one that you did before.
No, I had ring rust. I never had character rust. The character was, that was all me. So that was, pretty much second nature for me. I did have some ring rust when I came back as, as Hurricane Helms without the mask, the long hair, the MMA shorts and stuff like that. But I got over that pretty quickly. But no, character rust, no, none at all.
You were released in, I think, 2010. That's a different story for a different day. Maybe an entire show, maybe.
No, we addressed that last week in the Fight Backstage one.
Yeah, a little.
That's all there is to that story. There's nothing more to it. I wish there was an epic story there, but there really isn't. My time there was
make
done.
Some shit up, Shane. Just make some shit up.
I'll come up with some shit. I'll make it better.
Now, looking back at the brand split, now by the time you're gone, there's like so much crossover. Was there ever a sense of why are they still doing this?
Yeah. Anytime they would do that crossover stuff, and they would only do it with certain guys, it was just like, why are they doing this? I always felt, and I still feel, that there's a pay-per-view that they should do every year, and it's legit Raw versus SmackDown, like Super Bowl style. And they own the Clash of the Champions name, so that's a perfect name for it. Outside of WrestleMania and outside of the Rumble, whatever, every year I have this Super Bowl card where it's the National League against the American League. It's just what the Super Bowl is. And do it, WWE champion against Universal champion, whatever they got now. That's still what I feel they should do, and make it mean something. And fans would go to look forward to that, because you want to see, but the thing is, the downside is that one team's going to lose, but that's okay. You can tell stories about that, stories where, say if SmackDown loses the Clash of the Champions show, that there's people cussing out the champions, and you let us down. There's so much that you could do with that, and just go forward with it and stick with it. Like, I still think there's money to be made. I still think that's a great idea.
What did you think about WWE bringing back the brand split in 2016?
It's good. I like it. I think SmackDown, just as it was back in the past, is a better show. And so, it's a good idea. Is not as successful as their best brand split is NXT. Mm-hmm. Because it's still WWE company, but it's a different brand. No matter what people say, that they try to act like NXT isn't WWE. The check says WWE. That's what it is. But stick with it. Stick with that brand separation, and create that interest in the champion versus champion. Create that Super Bowl moment. They got to stick with it. So I'm a fan of it. You get to see more guys. So that's always good.
This is almost a product of NXT's success, this brand split, because they've had so many people, or maybe a product of them signing the right people, because, well, several of those people were developed by WWE, like Carmella was, Alexa Bliss was, Charlotte was, Big Cass and Enzo were. So I'm not of that opinion that some people have, that the Performance Center hasn't produced anybody, because this produced some very entertaining characters. But they've also signed guys like Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, who were established to a pretty good degree before. So yeah, I think it was the right time. Unfortunately, we're seeing some injuries take their toll, but that SmackDown show is fun to watch every week for me, and that's not always the case.
Yeah,
go ahead.
SmackDown's my second favorite show of the week. Obviously, I'm partial to what TNA does, but then I think SmackDown's number 2. Then I watch New Japan, Ring of Honor, and Raw actually comes in at number 5. Oh, yeah. As far as the ones I enjoy.
Without a doubt, Raw is the least digestible show that I watch each week. TNA and SmackDown are much easier. New Japan, it's kind of down there because I've seen most of this stuff, because they're getting to the point to where I had started to cover that elsewhere. But like, I watch a 2-hour show, and whether I'm DVRing the first 30 minutes, I get home late, I can catch up and watch a whole show in an hour and a half. And it's like,
the knock against New Japan for me is you don't go through any emotions on the show. You know, there's no emotional journey as far as some things that will make you sad, some things, you know, you should be horrified over, some things you get some good comedy out of. You don't get that on that because it's strictly a wrestling show. But I'm a wrestling fan, so that's why I like it. But, you know, just putting it all out there, that's the one thing I don't get out of that show. Whereas, you know, SmackDown and TNA really, I think, take you on that journey. So, and Raw takes me on another journey. It normally ends up with me asleep, and then I wake up through some weird commercial screaming at me. But they got better commercials.
About how is it about how this is his hair and he can do with it what he wants? Is that the journey? That dumbass Bosley commercial?
Possibly.
That fucking commercial sucks so bad.
Before people attack me for it, the commercials during TNA, there's some weird ones on there too. There's some poop commercial about making your shit smell good that some girl's doing, and it is fucking terrifying. Every time it comes on, I'm just smothering myself with a pillow going, what the hell is this?
We consider
here's where I get a text. Don't insult our commercials.
Hey, we considered buying ad time on TNA once. Still may do that. You never know. What do you think the legacy of that brand extension, the original one, will be?
That is a good idea. Obviously, if it's still going on, even though it took a break, obviously an idea that lasts that long must be pretty good. But it was the extension of the WCW buyout and the ECW. Vince he won the big wars, and so he had to create his own competition, and that's the legacy of it. I imagine if there was ever if he ever actually did buy TNA, which was rumored not too long ago, they would be a part of the brand extension as well. So it's cool to have that from their standpoint, that big of a controlling interest in the entire industry, that you can create your own, your own show like that. So I like it. It gave a lot of people opportunities that they might not otherwise have gotten. And we got stars out of it that we might not otherwise have gotten. And we got to see some people that struck out, and that just fucking happens sometimes. It happens in every industry, every entertainment industry in the world. So we saw some winners, we saw some losers, but it's been cool to see either way.
Do you think there were some people that struck out that if they were on that other brand, they could have excelled?
I don't know if that's the reason. I think the people that struck out just struck out because, of other factors. But there were some people that struck out in WWE and they went on to become bigger stars elsewhere. Mark Jindrak is huge in Mexico.
He's a soap opera star. I'm not talking about
just physically. He's a huge star there, and I stay in contact with him. He was, should be, a star in the U.S. right now, but he loves Mexico. He's doing well there, so I can't slight him for sticking with what's working for him.
Yeah, he's a big soap opera star down there too, right?
Yeah, he does soap operas, all kinds of stuff. Him big star.
Yeah. So if you all want any other questions answered about the brand extension at the beginning of next week's show, we'll do that. As always, send in your ideas for topics at ShaneHelms.com or at Sean Ross Sapp. Of course, the easiest way is to register on Fightful.com. Use our forums, go to the open discussion area, and just submit your topics. I'll have a thread there. Anything you'll want to talk about that we can talk about at length. I know the one about being an agent will be coming up soon. I know running a show will be coming up soon. Been getting a lot of requests about those. We're going to cover the invasion angle soon. Lots of cool stuff. As always, check out TNA Impact every Thursday night on Pop TV. You're devious, Shane.
Why's that?
You know why.
I don't know what you're talking about, man. I'm innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, you'll be proven guilty on Pop TV pretty soon.
Hey, man, sometimes you got to drop the gorilla on people.
You're disgusting. What's that supposed to mean? Is that a shot at me because I'm from Cincinnati and they shot Harambe?
No, it wasn't actually. It's if you want to hear a Nathan Jones story real quick before we pop off.
Of course.
There was
surprised he was around long enough for there to be any, but go ahead.
He was he was telling somebody a story about what he wanted to do. And he goes, yeah, and I take this gorilla right here and I smash him. And then I take this fucking gorilla right here and I smash him. And it was just one of those things that tickled the shit out of me, and I never forgot it. So if you've been watching TNA and you see how I'm known to attack from behind and I hit him with this gorilla right here, that's what I'm talking about. That's a little homage to Nathan Jones. So.
He ended up being in some movies too. It's pretty successful.
He's a big, scary, terrifying looking human being.
He is. Anything you want to tell the people before we go?
I think you covered it, man. TNA Thursday nights, 8 p.m. on the Pop channel. Other than that, at Shane Helms cross-platform, Twitter, Instagram, everything. That's where I'll be. That's where you can find me.
Guys, I want to thank you all so much for the support. Last week's show was our most downloaded audio show that we've ever had. If you are listening on audio and you want to see these beautiful faces, or at least one beautiful face right here, we're on YouTube as well, youtube.com/Fightful. Of course, you can get all that stuff at Fightful.com, wrestling, MMA, boxing coverage, forums, videos, photos. But you can subscribe to us on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. We also have a direct download. So I was very pleased, Shane, to see that show took off, because I got to do a little work for these. I can't just watch a show. I got to go back and research it.
Yeah, man, that's good. You do it. You know, I've done so much that it's hard to keep it all in context and remember it and keep it in order. Like, I did what? I did when? You know, I get that shit all the time. So yeah, you do a lot of research. So hats off you to that. You know, I can't give answers without you giving some good questions. So.
Hey, I'm a good hand. What can I say?
You're a good hand, kid. You're a good hand.
Subscribe to us. We got the Matt Riddle Show, early access members only. He suplexed a man through a bunch of chairs the other day. Maybe we'll talk about stuff like that in Shane Helms' Agent podcast. Until next time, guys, we're out.